Afternoon, Judge Fujie.
Good afternoon, Charles.
Thank you for traveling all the way to San Francisco to be part of this very special event.
I'm delighted to be here.
I note through looking at your bio that you've been involved in advocacy for a diverse bench for quite a number of years.
A long time, yeah.
I wonder if you'd mind sharing what this milestone means to you, given your experience.
This is incredible. Over 100 APA judges on the bench in California is amazing. It's something that I never would have dreamed of when I started practicing in 1978. I was literally the first APA woman lawyer practicing in Los Angeles at a big firm. And so there were absolutely no role models. I think our first woman judge actually was appointed that year, which is Catherine Doy Todd, to the Los Angeles Municipal Court. But it was something that was very, very rare. And so seeing 100 of us where we are a force to be reckoned with is inspiring, I know, to especially our younger lawyers, but is also thrilling for me to be part of that.
And were you practicing at the time at Morgan Lewis?
No, my first job was at a firm called Adams, Dukey and Hazeltine, which was an old line, very conservative firm. Actually, Richard Nixon had practiced there before he ran for president. It had these blue chip clients, and I was the firm minority in the entire firm, and I think we had 3 officers or so. I was the only minority in there, so it was an interesting experience. And I did go to Morgan Lewis next, to when they were just starting their Los Angeles office.
Well, that reminds me of a story that Justice Harry Lowe related to me a couple years ago, which was that when he was working as a deputy for the Governor Brown Sr. About 50 years ago.
Gosh.
He was often mistaken by the governor for another Chinese deputy named Delbert Wong. And
sure. I know
and
Delbert.
So he said that when the governor would see him, he'd say, "Oh, there's my Chinese deputy."
I actually get called by the name of every Asian judge in Los Angeles. And most of the time I'll just say hi.
Well, when Justice Lowe was appointed in San Francisco in Northern California, he was the first in Northern California, but at that time the other Chinese deputy, Delbert Wong, had been appointed to Los Angeles. When you first started practicing in 1978 in Los Angeles, were there, how many APA judges were there to your knowledge?
As far as I knew, there was 1, maybe 2. It was very, very early on in things, and Governor Brown Jr. in his first term had started to appoint APAs, and it was an exciting time. But there wasn't, frankly, there weren't that many of us overall. So, but as I said, so now here we are at 100, over 100, right?
So, in your own career, you're no stranger to being the first of something, and you mentioned that when you first started practicing, I think you said you were the first minority to practice in your firm?
Yeah. Oh, yes. No, I wasn't the first minority. It was a tag team system where there was an African-American woman, Ernestine Forrest, there when I was a summer clerk. And I thought, oh, this is great. She was wonderful. And I thought, she'll be a wonderful mentor. And when I got there, she had left. And so it turned out that we sort of went in a tag team system, although I was replaced by 2 people, by Fumi Wasserman and Brian Sun. So I felt very proud of that. I doubled the number of minorities in our firm. But I do remember my very first firm retreat at Adams Dukey, where it was a non-spousal retreat, and back then the people saw this as it was mostly men, as an opportunity to drink as much as possible for free. And one of my colleagues from my class started chasing me around the room yelling, "Jap, Jap, Jap." And the partners thought that was pretty funny. And when I complained about it, they said, "Oh, Holly, don't be so sensitive, for heaven's sakes." So that's the way things were back then.
One of the things that stands out for me about your volunteer work is that you spend a good deal of your time mentoring women and minorities. And I'm wondering if that story that you related to me and those experiences you had as a junior attorney shaped in any way your desire to do that.
Oh, absolutely. People ask me all the time, they say, well, are you giving forward? Is it that you got mentoring and so you want to be a mentor? And I always said, there wasn't anybody really to give forward when I first started. So what I do is I try to help people. I try to help people the way I would have liked to have been helped. And I don't want anybody to ever go through the kind of experiences that I went through. And I want them to be able to have somebody when something happens, or they just need some advice, to just send me an email or give me a call. We'll go out to lunch and we'll talk about things. And when I see those mentees, move up through the ranks and gain prominence, I'm so proud. I think it's a tremendous privilege to be able to help young attorneys. And I think I've got about 4 or 5 lunches on schedule right now with various young lawyers, and actually I've got a law student and a high school student on that roster. So lots and lots of mentees, and it's one of the most interesting and fun things that I do.
We've made certain progress. We certainly have made progress. That's undeniable. I mean, the fact that you have women and minority attorneys reaching out to you for mentorship by itself is progress.
Yes.
But as a person who's experienced being a first in many respects, can you identify what was it, thinking back to the beginning of your practice and perhaps even your upbringing, that gave you the courage to decide that, okay, well, even if there aren't role models that I can emulate, I can be that first?
I have to say that I was tremendously lucky. I went to Berkeley in the 70s, and my very first semester, I remember there was a very small Asian American Law Students Association back there at Berkeley, and we had a retreat. And the person who led that retreat was a graduate, a young, handsome graduate named Dale Minami. And I think Dale was there. I think it's possible that some other of his friends, people from the Asian Law Caucus, came to talk to us about being an Asian lawyer and what it meant and what our responsibilities were as Asian lawyers. And I think it gave the people who were there, the people who followed us, a tremendous sense of mission, that we were here for a reason. And I've always thought it's a little bit daunting. I think it still is daunting. We still are not so prevalent in the profession that we can just say, oh yeah, that person, that young Asian lawyer stole from his firm, and that's okay, because there's so many others. We always feel like we're role models. So many of us feel like, I have always felt like, I have to be at least apparently perfect all the time. And it's very wearing. It's very tiring. And to not be that role model. But I think we still do have to be. We have to be that because we still are the one Asian in the firm. You don't want to be the one that that this is what happens, and I know because I spent so much time in large firms. One person does something that's not perfect, and it becomes, oh yes, well, we had problems with those people before. You want to be the one that's like, boy, we want to hire more Asian Americans because look at her, look at him. They're doing such an amazing job. They're so hardworking. They're so smart. They're such great lawyers. You want to be the one to open the door for others. And also, so that when somebody interviews, say, they'll see somebody who looks like you. And that was, something that never ever happened when I was when I was interviewing, when I was in practice. So it's really important to me to be able to give that to people.
Well, I can tell you that 4 years ago, when I was prepping for a panel with a former president of the Asian American Bar Association, that she told me that she feels exactly the same way.
Oh, yeah.
And so that experience still exists today. I'm wondering on a personal level how it is that you deal with and have dealt with the burden of not wanting to make others look bad.
Deep breathing. It's hard. It really is. And I tell people, I say, it's like when I tell people, it's like when I'll be talking to you as when you're immediate past president of AABA, and I'll be saying, okay, where are you going next, and what can you do in the majority bar, and that it's something where we want to build up the pipeline so that we're not unusual anymore. It's not going to be, it's great to be a first, but I'd rather have it be so many people that nobody's counting. Nobody ever says, wow, that person is like the 57th white guy, president of the state bar. That's, Jason Lee, the first Asian American man, president of the state bar. It's now the board of trustees. And it would be nice to get past those firsts, and that makes it easier. But I think we still have a ways to go. I mean, law was never sort of the automatic default job for Asian Americans. I mean, we're supposed to be doctors, right? I was supposed to be a concert pianist. Don't even think about that. But, I was told basically doctor, lawyer, concert pianist. I hate piano. Hate it. I played it for 16 years. I hate it. And I didn't really want to be a doctor, and my mother said that I talked too much, so it must be law was where I should be going. But I was told by somebody that it was like doctor, engineer, business person, lawyer. And so I don't know how that really works, but I think that it's still a profession where we need to become more visible. I mean, actually what's funny is that I helped organize with the Asian Pacific American Women Lawyers Alliance a celebration of 100 APA women partners in law firms. And I had been keeping track of this for a number of years. Every year I would make my poor, long-suffering extern count them and literally go through and look at people's pictures, because maybe they changed their name, maybe they were adopted. So, or how many Lees are there? Come on. So I would do that, and when I got to 100, I was like, we have to do this. Because, and I said, if there are 100 women partners, there are like 500 or 1,000 APA women associates, much less men. But when I told people that, they were like, really? They go, yeah, they are, and these are prominent women, and they're making a difference in their law firms, and we need to celebrate that. And it was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to count other people too? I don't know who they thought we were counting, but we really are a force to be reckoned with in the legal world, but we are still seen as being sort of unusual or exotic. I don't like that.
Another milestone, and one that a lot of people in the community know you for, is that you were the first APA woman president. You were the first APA president of the California State Bar. Right. And the third female president of the State Bar. I wonder if there are experiences that you had as a woman, as a minority, that you'd be willing to share that might help young attorneys.
What was interesting, I think, about being the first APA partner and the third woman was that you get from the title, you get from the office a lot of deference and a lot of, people want to give dinners for you and things like that. And it gave me a platform. And I decided, and maybe if I could go back a little bit to when I decided to run for president. Back then, the board of what was then the Board of Governors, they had to vote for who would become the next president of the state bar, and it was somebody from the third-year class. So we had I think 5 or 6 people in the third-year class, 3 women and 3 men, and the board was majority white male, and the other men and the men were all white and men. And so I looked at that and I thought, I'm not going to win. I'm not going to, and so I thought, I'm not going to run. I'm just not going to run. I'm not going to, because back then we had a printed version of the daily, of the State Bar Journal, and and the pictures of everybody who ran was on the front page. So everybody in the state would know that you had run, and then at some point somebody would be elected, and for years afterwards, if I didn't get it, people would say to me, "Weren't you president of the State Bar?" And you go, No, I wasn't. And they say, "Well, I really thought you were." No, I wasn't. And then they'll say, "I voted for you," but they didn't because they weren't on the Board of Governors. So you would have these uncomfortable conversations for the rest of your life. And so I thought, this is not worth it. I am just not going to do it. Then I was at the State Bar annual meeting before we had to announce if we were running. And I was sitting on a dais, It was just because I was on the Board of Governors. There was no other reason. I wasn't speaking. I wasn't doing anything. I was just up there eating. And I was with Judge Alex Kaczynski and Mayor Villaraigosa of Los Angeles. And again, we spoke a little bit, but nothing much. And afterwards, I'm walking down the aisle, and I see Justice Catherine Doy Todd, again, the first woman APA judge in California, possibly in the United States. She's walking towards me and she's got tears in her eyes. And she said, "Holly, I was so proud to see you up there with those important people. I was just so proud as a Japanese American to see you up there." And I thought, I didn't do anything. And I made her proud, one of the most important role models for APA women. I made her proud just by sitting up there. I said, what could I do by becoming president of the State Bar? And I thought, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to win. If I lose, I lose. And I worked very, very hard, and I ended up getting elected. And so I thought, what's the purpose of doing this if you aren't making a difference as an APA president? And as a matter of fact, it used to be a big thing where you had the entire Conference of Delegates was there, the chief of the Supreme Court swore you in, you had all these very important people there. And so, I was planning my speech, and I started off with a speech about insurance. It was not very interesting, but it was an issue before the Board of Governors, and I thought, I'll talk about that as an issue. I'd done some work on that before, on malpractice insurance, and then I think and I'd already sent in my speech to the State Bar, which was going to publish it. And so, but that night I started thinking, this is dumb. I thought anybody could give that speech. I want to give a speech where it makes a difference. And so I had to call up the State Bar, say, don't publish that speech. I'm completely rewriting my speech. And I started talking about, because again, it was a primarily white and a lot of it was male audience. I said, I wanted people to understand what it felt like to be a minority and a woman in the bar, and that it's not as easy as perhaps you think. So I talked about, I want everybody here to visualize a time when you were the only person who looked like you in a room. When you walked into a room and you were the only person who looked like you. I said, and think about this. Think if you walked into a courtroom, you're a litigator, you walk into a courtroom with your client, and you're a white male and he's a white male, and you walk in and the judge is a short Asian woman. and the court reporter is a short Asian woman, and the clerks are short Asian women, and the jury is all short Asian women, and the other side is an Asian woman lawyer and an Asian woman client. I said, and let's just assume that everybody in that room is completely fair, that you know that in your heart they're completely fair. How do you feel? Do you think maybe I'm thinking, oh, maybe things aren't going to be really fair, because that's the perception you have. And I asked everybody in that room, I said, when you are in a room, if you are not, when you are in a room where everybody pretty much looks like you, somebody walks into that room who doesn't look like you, would you go to them, shake their hand, invite them in? Because otherwise, I will tell you, the first urge is to turn tail and run. You think, oh, I don't know anybody, nobody looks like me, I don't want to face this. I said, and for those of you who are women and minorities, who've been in that situation, when you go into that room, I want you to go up to the nearest person, shake their hand, and introduce yourself. Because if you don't do it, then the next person who comes along who looks like you will do this, will worry, because they'll be the first one there, and otherwise you'll be there. So I thought it was an important message, and that's what I spoke about for the entire year. I talked about women's issues, I talked about minority issues of all sorts. And for me, it was so satisfying, and I gathered tons and tons of mentees, and had a wonderful time, and I like to think I made a difference.
Even though we are making progress, there are a lot of young attorneys starting out now, particularly female attorneys who might be minority, will have that experience where they walk into a room and they're still the first.
Yes.
What can you say to them? It's easy to understand something cognitively, but what can you say to them so that they might have the courage to stick with it and be that person who extends the hand and introduces themselves?
I tell people all the time, especially young lawyers of color and women, I say, don't ever think of yourself as being disadvantaged in that sense. Don't ever walk in and think, oh gosh, these people all know each other, and they all maybe went to school together, or they all grew up in the same environment. I said, you have these wonderful skills that they don't have, because you have the skills of living in basically two worlds. I mean, I always said, the world that I grew up with, I was a Japanese American kid living in an African American community, and later with a lot of Latinos, and so I said I grew up and I was able to navigate with my family, where you couldn't say certain things or you couldn't speak in a certain way, and you had to act in a certain way, and that was the way you had to act in order to survive, or else your mother would get you. So you have that. You were able to take that, and you were able to live that life and fit in there. Then you went to school, and you fit in with another culture. And then sometimes you went to work, and you fit in with another culture. I said, so you know all about how to change like a chameleon, and to put all those things and keep them inside yourself and make it part of you. So people who grew up in a one-note world, where everybody was just like them and who had the same experience as they do, what are they going to do when they have to deal with a client from a foreign country? What are they going to do when they have to deal with a judge who's from a different ethnic background? They don't have the kind of ability to make those changes and yet stay true to themselves that you have. So you have that special skill, and you can use it.
Judge Fujie, you mentioned how growing up as a Japanese American with having to relate to your mother, and then growing up in a African American neighborhood that later became Latino, allowed you to learn how to navigate different worlds. One thing that stands out for me in your background and in your volunteer work is the extent to which you work to build bridges through the Multicultural Alliance and a variety of other bar associations and initiatives that you lead. I'm wondering if there was anything about your upbringing that made that a priority for you.
Absolutely. I always had friends in all ethnic groups, and this is just the way I grew up, and so I don't like the idea of sort of a balkanization of the various ethnic groups. We have so much in common on how we can help each other, and we need to work together. As a matter of fact, when I was back in LA, our presiding judge, Kevin Brazil, who's the first African-American presiding judge in Los Angeles Superior Court, we were talking about the new Judicial Appointments Secretary, Marty Jenkins, Justice Marty Jenkins, and we were saying, oh, okay, we want to have a reception in Los Angeles, and we want it to be all the ethnic and specialty bars. We want them all to come together to give him a chance to meet everybody and to get the connection so that he knows who he can talk to about these issues. And I see, I understand, APA bars are near and dear to my heart, and women's bars are very important to me. But I think that it's important for everybody. It's important for our courts. Important for our community to have all groups working together and helping each other as best we can. One of the things that I do, I sit on the board of the Women Lawyers Association of Los Angeles and of the Asian Pacific American Women Lawyers Alliance. And one of the things that I do on the board of what we call WALALA is organize what I call the sister bars, which is all the ethnic bars and the women and WALALA. So I put together a program on public speaking, which I thought would be a lot of fun. And I came up with the idea because I saw the Chief Justice speaking. And as we all know, the Chief Justice, who is Asian American, is also the best speaker in the world. And she speaks completely off the cuff. She is amazing in the way that she conveys ideas, and I'm such a big admirer of her. So I was actually talking to her about that idea. And then I came up with this idea of doing it with all the women's bars in Los Angeles, Latina lawyers, Black women lawyers, Asian Pacific American Women Lawyers Alliance, and Women Lawyers Association of Los Angeles, and putting together a group of young women to talk to them about how they can become great public speakers. And then at the end of it, have them break out into groups and give a little speech where they would introduce another member of the group as if they were receiving an award. And what was great about this, so I had a group of 4 young women. There was, I think, 1 Latino, 1 African American, 1 Asian, and 1 white woman. And I said, okay, the 2 of you will interview each other and find out what award you think would be appropriate for the other person. And then I want you to come up, talk to them about their lives, talk to them about why they would deserve that award, and then put together a little speech about it. And they did that. They were wonderful, but it was not just that. Number one, they got to know each other personally on a very personal basis. And they also, because the other person was saying to them, hey, you deserve an award, it was tremendous for their self-esteem. And these were young lawyers who'd never had a public speaking opportunity before. And to be able to feel like, oh, how would I feel if I got this award? And somebody was talking about me. And they started thinking, gee, maybe I should do things so that I really, in real life, deserve an award. And it was great. And when we all came back for sort of a final session where we talked about how we wanted people to continue working together, and that we were probably going to have future versions of the program. And what was great was that you couldn't get them to stop talking to each other. And they were all talking cross-culturally. There was nobody talking to people who looked just like them. And I thought that is probably the proudest moment I've had in putting together a program where I felt like this is opening communication in areas that possibly they never would have had before. So I thought that was a lot of fun. And now we're talking about doing one on speaking in front of a judge. So we're going to be having a good time with that.
You mentioned holding an event in LA for the benefit of the incoming judicial appointments advisor,
yes.
Justice Marty Jenkins, so that he can have an opportunity to know who the leaders are of the different affinity bars and who he can seek counsel from on judicial appointments.
Right.
I had the opportunity to interview Hoyt Zia, who was...
Oh, yes, he's wonderful.
Yeah, Hoyt is wonderful. A former general counsel of Hawaiian Airlines, former president of AABA Bay Area, also founding president of NAPABA, the first president. And I asked him at the 40th anniversary of AABA, why is an organization like AABA still relevant? And to paraphrase, he said that he had hoped back then, the founding of NAPABA, that an organization like AABA or the affinity bars wouldn't be necessary. But in his estimation, it still is necessary. But his goal as a founder of bar organizations was to make it to a point where it's not necessary. What in your mind today in 2019 is the continuing relevance and importance of affinity bars like APA bars such as AABA?
I have to say that, yes, I would love for this not to be necessary. I would love for this just to be, be a social thing, like a sorority and fraternity, something like that, where it wasn't necessary to help build the pipeline, to help build the leadership of the bar. I think it's something that it will always be something that will be near and dear to my heart, and I know to so many people. And it's something where you feel like you can kind of let your hair down and be yourself at this bar. But I think that we still have a long way to go. We still need to have that leadership. I want it not to be a big deal when somebody becomes the managing partner of a major firm. I remember when Chuck Shimada became, I think she was managing partner of was in Bingham McCutcheon, I guess. She was a year behind me at law school. She was a friend of mine from law school, and I was so proud of her. I mean, but I'd like it to be where it's like, oh yeah, another APA managing partner. Another APA, it's like on the California Supreme Court. It's like, well, everybody on the California Supreme Court is Asian American. I mean, that was, for a while it was like you kind of have to be Asian American to be named to the Supreme Court, which was pretty cool. But that, for a lot of things, for general counsel, for rainmaking partners, for attorney, an attorney general, things like that. We want to get past all those first to where it's something that people could obviously think, oh yes, of course, I can do that, and not have to think, well, nobody's ever done that before, and that's what all the Asian bars are really about now, is to help people get into power. We're here, we're in the profession, we're in pretty big numbers, but we need to be with easy access to power. Power is frankly what it's all about. And I'm always telling women, I'm always telling Asian Americans, I say, power is not a four-letter word. It shouldn't be something we're afraid of. It should be something that we naturally should feel is within our grasp, and is something that we need to do in order to establish ourselves in the legal community and in the United States as large.
We live at a time nationally where, to me, it's reminiscent of that moment in California's history when we were about to become a majority-minority state, and there were ballot propositions and laws proposed that struck a xenophobic tone. Today, there's a pushback, among some political thinkers and intellectuals, and they identify what we might be considered doing as identity politics in a pejorative way.
Yes.
Do you have
it's always pejorative when it's other people. It's not so much when it's them. But anyway.
Do you have any thoughts on that phenomenon and any response?
I think that all minority groups and women would like to be in a position where it wasn't necessary to have interest groups and identity groups, where again it could be something that was just social. If you wanted to meet with people, when you come up with situations where, like I said, I get called by the names of every other Asian woman judge, or where people are treated like, if they don't do well, then nobody in their ethnic group will go well. Honestly, it's like if other people would stop treating us as if we were this narrow little group, then we could stop worrying about that. But as long as people are going to treat us that way, we have to use, again, we have to get power. If you have no power, you can't do anything about the status quo.
Are there any thoughts that you would like to share with our audience, which will be primarily a diverse an APA bar audience?
Don't be afraid. Do not be afraid, and don't be afraid to fail. I think that it's one of the things that, for the way I was brought up not to lose face. The Japanese saying that everybody talks about, the nail that sticks up gets pounded down. And so you wanted to just go along and not have anybody notice you and be viewed as everybody else. You just wanted to be seen as everybody else. But the problem is that doesn't work, and that you have to realize the importance of your getting your own personal power, and to work to help other people to get their power. And when you work like crazy to become a partner, or to become general counsel, or to become a judge, to be something where again you're in control of your own destiny, and then you start helping other people. And that is, for me, the most satisfying thing you can do, is to be able to look back. I mean, I always joke my greatest mentee is Jacqueline Wynn, who's now in the Ninth Circuit. She interviewed with me for a summer clerkship back a long time ago, and now it's quite rude of me to call her a mentee, because she is a mentor to so many other people. But when you can help other people in any small amount, it's like some kind of multiplier, because they go out and help other people. And I never want people to ever feel like they're powerless in this profession. And I would tell every APA young lawyer, I'd say you need to understand that you can be a powerful person in this profession, and you will be able to take control of your own destiny.
Thank you.